What's going on, everybody? It is the NFL experts, and we're on time this week. We're on Wednesdays instead of Thursdays. There are no conflicts. I'm Wayne G. I'm joined by Mark D. What's going on, Mark?
What up, Wayne D? How are you, man?
Not too bad, man. I'm doing pretty good. I will say this, which is that we said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week. We're not your boys, and we're not asking you to smash anything, but we are going to ask you to follow us on social media if you want to be a little bit more interactive with us, whether that's on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is. You can find us at NFL Experts Pod. That's at NFL Experts Pod. We do have a nice graphic here for those of you who want to see it. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or email us, nflexpertspod@gmail.com. We are interactive. We will interact with you if you have questions, if you have thoughts. You know, we're here for you guys. That's why we do this, is because we know you guys like expert opinions. You're tired of all the blah, blah from these non-experts like Adam Schefter. Like, who the hell's that guy?
He's just a gossip, man.
He's basically the weekly world news of ESPN. So we're the real deal. We're NFL experts, and we're going to kick things off here. I actually don't have a next segment for our first segment, but we are going to kick things off with Deshaun Watson. I'm actually going to pull up a graphic I have here, and for some reason it's not come up. So funny, actually, and I feel like I'm killing. What is on there? If you're listening to the audio, I'm playing with graphics and such. But when I put these graphics in here, it messes them all up. There we go. Deshaun Watson, he's on the cover now. All right, out for the season. Shoulder injury. He's done for the year. I mean, huge for the Browns, right?
I know. I got to admit, first off, I put my foot in my mouth last week with the Browns. They played really well this last week. But yeah, we're talking about Deshaun Watson. Yeah, that's crushing news for them, man. They really needed a quarterback. They gave up all those draft picks and all that guaranteed money just so he can help them get over the hump and maybe get them into the playoffs and possibly the Super Bowl. So for Browns fans everywhere, this hurts.
I mean, the defense is elite with Myles Garrett and that whole team. They have great on the takeaway side of things. They're only allowing like 200 yards a game for their opponents, which is insane. They're an elite defense. They just need a decent quarterback. And I think Deshaun Watson wasn't playing out of his mind this year. He was completing about 62% of his passes for 190 yards a game, but he did have 7 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Now, when you look at the Browns, the big thing that kills them this year is turnovers. And P.J. Walker this year, who is going to be the starter now, I'm assuming, has a 49% completion percentage, has 5 interceptions to just 1 touchdown. So it's a huge downgrade going from Deshaun Watson. And I felt like with Deshaun Watson, this was a team that could make a playoff push.
Well, actually, I heard today they're actually going to be going with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, their rookie quarterback, which I'm sure his completion percentage can't be better than P.J. Walker's. So, yeah, you're right. They needed Deshaun Watson. And I feel like he was just getting into his groove. He was dusting off the rust. You know, last year he didn't play a lot. He played like 6 games. And then this year he got hurt right away. So he was struggling to play games because he couldn't stay healthy. So, yeah, this is big for them that their season's over, man, to be honest.
But it's amazing they've hung in as long as they have, because I think they lost Nick Chubb early, right? And they went out, they got Kareem Hunt to come in, and then they lose Deshaun Watson. So you're losing your 2 best offensive players. That defense doesn't score enough points. Like, it's just, that's a team that probably now is an 8-9 team.
Yeah, I would agree, which sucks because they were right in the thick of things in their division. So this really probably hurts them big. So for me, it's like, do you think he comes back and plays the same as he was like getting back into that groove, or does he go back to square one again with this injury?
I mean, it's the end of a season, so he's not going to get any more reps in practice this season. You know, in the offseason, obviously he can do stuff with the receivers, but that's only, you know, you guys are in shorts and T-shirts and whatnot. It's not the same. So then basically he's got to come into next preseason, and he's basically now a guy who played 6 or 7 games last year, didn't play the entire year before that, or I think the year before that. And it feels like, you know, they gave him all this money and he's just never going to play for him, or he's only going to play half a season every year.
Yep. It's like I said, it's sad news for them. And like what I was talking about last episode about the trade deadline, see if the trade deadline was still not till later in the year, they could have a chance to go pick up somebody, but because the trade line's already over, they're kind of screwed.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Browns. Obviously, that's what we feel about Deshaun Watson. We do have Brown-specific talk here coming up next. Hit the wrong button. This is we're amateurs today.
What's going on with you, Wayne?
All right, so the Browns did beat the Ravens 33-31. The Ravens, I think, are a legit Super Bowl contender. They're a team who's very good. I do love the new offense. I do love Lamar Jackson as a passing quarterback more so than a running quarterback. He can run if he has to, but not drawing up 20, option plays for him every year or every game. So I do like the Ravens. I don't think this was that big of an upset, if I'm being honest. I think the Browns defense has been beating good teams all year. They beat the 49ers, right? So, I mean, this is a team that's really good. I'm not super shocked that the Ravens lost this game. I know you put it down in our notes. It's kind of like an upset.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't an upset, but you're correct about it not being that big of a surprise because division teams, when they play each other, they always fight each other like this. So it didn't surprise me. But in that game, the Ravens went up on them 14 points, like right away, one off of a turnover. And then they went up on them 21 points before even halftime. And then after halftime, the Browns came out, got a pick six, and their defense is what brought them back in the game. It wasn't even Deshaun Watson.
Right. Well, and I was putting down some notes here for myself, and I know that the Browns, the Ravens came into this game actually on a 4-game winning streak, and over that duration, they were averaging about 412 yards per game. The Browns held them to 306, which is still a good amount, but almost that average of 2, whatever they're letting teams score. The Ravens are only turning the ball over once a game, but they turned over twice against the Browns. Again, that defense. The biggest thing, I think, is the Ravens' run game without Lamar Jackson. They've really been trying to focus on letting the running backs run, let Lamar pass, and I like that. And coming into this game, they were averaging 180 yards rushing per game. They got 106 in this game. And so I felt like that was really the deciding factors. If you take away Lamar Jackson's run game, the play action's no good. You can crowd the box. It's a messy situation for him.
Yeah, I would totally agree. You're right. That is what the offense they are running this year is more of a spread, and he's not running as often. So maybe that's why he couldn't come back in the end of the game because they weren't running like he said, and that's their bread and butter.
Yeah, I do know you'd brought it up last episode. We talked about different trades that could have happened, and the more I think about it, the more I really liked your idea of King Henry going to the Ravens. That would have been amazing.
That would have been a great pickup for them, man. Like that helped out him so much where he didn't have to run. He could rely on King Henry to get up all those first downs when they really needed him. So, what do I know?
Well, we're the experts. We know it all. So, all right. So that's kind of how we feel. It wasn't a super upset. The Browns win. This may be the last big win for the Browns all season, though. So I guess good for them.
And good for my Broncos because we play them in 2 weeks. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. The Broncos are on fire. They're probably the hottest team in the league right now.
Yeah, let's cool down that talk. Like I want us to keep winning, and I'm not gonna bring in, but maybe for my 2-minute warning.
Okay, perfect. All right, now let's hit the correct next section. This one's Dorsey. What happened? Oh.
You're fired.
Yeah. We're not having technical issues, just so you know, I'm just really sloppy with the clicking. But,
hey, everybody can have a bad day once in a while. It's all right, Wayne.
Yeah, exactly. So the big story here, obviously, is the Buffalo Bills fire Ken Dorsey. They just lost to the Broncos, I believe here, and I'm just looking over my notes for the last 4 games. They're 1-3. The last 4 games, they are coming off that 24-22 loss to the Broncos. They fire Ken Dorsey. I don't know if I think this is kind of a scapegoat for McDermott.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is Daboll was the offensive coordinator a couple years ago. And when you look at Daboll's offense, they were ranked number 3 in points, number 5 in yards. And then Dorsey takes over. They're number 2 in points, number 4 in yards. So they're better with Dorsey at the offensive coordinator position. The big thing, 31% turnover percentage the last 2 seasons. They were only 14% under Daboll. But is that Dorsey's fault or is that Josh Allen's fault?
You know what? I don't know, because now that you mentioned that, you bring me that question. They were saying on Monday Night Football, this is Josh Allen's best year in completion rate. He's completing 70% of his passes. I'm not sure what his percentage was under Dable, but they said this is like the best year he's ever had in that category. So in a way, you're right about that. Dorsey could possibly be the better OC, but like you said, the turnovers didn't help any of the cause of this new offense. So, you know, but like you were saying about it being a scapegoat thing, I totally agree with you on that, because last year the Bills, they sort of had one of those mutual agreement. Leslie Frazier was going to leave; he's going to take a year off. Let's just admit it. Like, he was the scapegoat for McDermott last year, and now this year it's Dorsey. And let's admit that McDermott has never really gave Josh Allen any weapons. They've never really had a run game. Josh Allen is the run game. So, like, granted, he's a defensive coach, so he's always focused on the defense, which the defense has been solid, but the offense has struggled because of that. And I think that he's ultimately the one to blame. So the reason why he fired Dorsey is so he can at least not get fired this year.
Well, and I have to take issue with you saying that he hasn't given him any weapons, because my favorite team is also in the AFC East. And let's talk about no weapons, okay? Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, Gabriel Davis, Juju Smith-Schuster.
Stephon Diggs is like, I wouldn't even call him a top 5 wide receiver in the league. He's more of like skidding on the top 10.
That's no weapons?
Well, I'm not saying there's no weapon. He's got some, but I'm just saying they rely on him 100% more of the time than they do on those other weapons. And Kincaid, they just picked up. They just literally just drafted. But tell me, what run game have they had?
I like Cook as a running back. I do. Again, he's not, Christian McCaffrey. He's not Derrick Henry. But again, you don't need a top 5 guy or a top 10 guy at every single position to have weapons.
No, but you got to have a decent run game. You can't make Josh Allen the run game.
I don't think they make him the run game. A lot of his runs are on scrambles. Maybe that's the offensive line's fault. But it's not like when the Ravens were drawing up, the run play option for Lamar Jackson. He was running it 27 times a game. Allen does usually lead the team in rushing, but it's on like 8 carries or 9 carries, because it's usually on runs out of the pocket when the defense is spread out.
And then a lot of times they, like, when in his rookie year, they had like design runs, which they don't really do that a lot of anymore, because they probably want to keep him healthy. And I've noticed a lot this year that he really doesn't run a lot, probably because he's trying to stay healthy. He's had nagging injuries the last few seasons. I'm just saying that McDermott relies, like, granted, he's like one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now, but they rely on him to do too much. And in that game, Surtain, the Broncos corner, which is legit awesome, shut down Diggs. And then when he didn't have Diggs, he didn't have anywhere to go. He struggled all game.
Well, the comments are coming in, so I'm going to click on some of these comments here. And, Buck had started off saying that the Broncos are the second hottest team in the NFL. So I'm curious who the first is. And then he says, let's see what he has here. A junior high offense. Okay.
Hey, it's winning games.
Yeah, he took it to Diggs is a top 10 easy, pushing top 5. I agree. I think Buck's 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was saying that he's skidding on the maybe on the very end of top 10.
He also says the Bills have never been a running team since drafting Josh Allen.
See, he agrees.
Again, I think that, again, Josh Allen has a big arm, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second as well, as his arm and his style. And then Buck says here, no, the issue is Ken Dorsey. It's simply the offense is a junior level at best. Watch the film. Diggs lines up outside the numbers. He runs out or slant. All right, so here's my thing.
I would agree with that.
Is that they have good weapons. Josh Allen, to me, and by the way, actually, before I get into that, Buck, Man Hour Buck, one of our followers here, he has a show called Man Hour NFL, raw, uncut, every day at 10 a.m. He always gives us shout-outs when I'm on there, so wanted to give him a shout-out.
Shout out to Buck for the comments last episode. We appreciate that, man.
Yeah, for sure. But let's talk about Josh Allen here for just a second. So Josh Allen has the term applied to him called gunslinger. I'm sure you've heard this. Josh Allen's a gunslinger. They used to say it about Brett Favre as well.
Yep, right? About Elway.
Right. And what that means is high risk of making a turnover, bad decision turnover. Strong arm, high risk throws, right? Because you're trying to rely on that arm strength. I thought it was funny. I did see somebody on Facebook had posted a meme, and I try not to get too political or anything like that, but I will say this: the meme said, "Why is it when it's a white quarterback he's a gunslinger, but when it's a black quarterback he can't read the defense?" And so that's why it makes me think: is Josh Allen just not able to read the defense, and he relies too much on his arm strength? And we're going to blame Ken Dorsey for Josh Allen throwing it into double coverage.
That's a very interesting point. Because honestly, that's kind of where my thought was going. Is like at some point, Josh Allen has to do it, right? He's the guy, right? They rely on him to do so much. Like at some point, he's got to take over the game and win, and he hasn't done that.
Yeah, I definitely think it falls more on Josh Allen. I say that, Dorsey's a scapegoat because if you're the head coach and you want to keep your job, you've got to side with the quarterback and say it's not the quarterback's fault. He's running an offense that's not working. But I don't care if you put Josh McDaniels or Eric Bieniemy back there calling the plays. If Josh Allen's going to force the issue, he's going to throw a lot of interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. And like you were saying about that stigma that is, I'm not a fan of that one at all either.
All right. Well, speaking of quarterbacks, we're actually going to dive into some quarterbacks here. So first up, we're going to talk about Josh Dobbs because he had quite a game, and I do want to put up Buck's last comment on the topic of the Bills. He says, "Here's the deal: Josh Allen has to be a slinger because of the basic play calling. He does make bad choices, yes, but he has to because you have two routes. We've got multiple receivers. You don't have to throw it to Stephon Diggs. Although here's the problem again: you do have to throw it to Stephon Diggs. Otherwise, he's going to complain and say we're not friends."
Or he's going to try to tweet his way out of there like he did in Minnesota.
But let's talk about a quarterback who doesn't have that same kind of issue. That's Josh Dobbs. And I'm really excited to talk about Josh Dobbs because this is a guy who, when he was traded to the Vikings, and I mentioned this last week, I thought it was basically not going to help the Vikings at all. It was like a waste of a trade. He came in there that first week, had to relieve the starter, didn't even know the full playbook or partially even the playbook, brings the team back. They win the game. Then this week he comes out. Actually, I got his numbers here because I want to make sure I had them. And he goes, gets a 27-19 win against the Saints. He's 23 of 34, which is a 67.6% completion rate, 268 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Josh Dobbs is earning himself.
And also 2 wins.
Yeah, 2 wins.
Also 2 wins.
He's earning himself quite the payday in the offseason.
Yes, and I would totally agree. Can we just say that this is like the best story in the NFL right now? Would you agree with that, Wayne?
I still think DeMar Hamlin coming back is pretty big, but
okay, but at least Josh Dobbs is on the field and making stuff happen.
Right.
Like you said, 70% completion. He's accounted for 5 TDs over the 2 games, 3 passing, 2 rushing. He's overcome some circumstances, man, that are crazy. Think about this. Okay, so last year, was it last year? He came in for Tennessee, right? Because they didn't trust Malik Willis, and he came in that last game and played, and he played pretty well. I don't know if they won I don't think they won the game, but he played as a decent quarterback. And then come this year, he goes to Arizona, thinking he's going to play a while because Kyler Murray's hurt, which he does. And then they tell him, "Oh, we're not going to trade you. We're not going to trade you." They trade him. He gets traded to Minnesota. Literally has to go in the game when he knows no play calls. He doesn't even know half of his teammates' names, let alone the play calls. He goes in there, balls out, wins the game, comes back again this week, goes out, balls out, wins again. So he's got it. Like, for me, he's the best story right now.
Well, Buck does say, he said the Vikings are the hottest team in the NFL. So that answers your question of who the hottest team is. He says that the Vikings are the hottest team.
And we play them next week too.
And he says that they're winning without Justin Jefferson. Wait till he comes back.
True.
I do have to say, I like the Josh Dobbs story. I am curious how this plays out for him in the end. I mean, again, when he was in Arizona, he wasn't winning. He was at 63%. He did have 8 touchdowns to 5 interceptions while he was there. He was a 4th-round pick in 2017. He didn't play in 2019. He didn't play in 2021. And in all the seasons combined up until the season, he'd thrown 85 total passes. So now he's putting on a show, not really putting on a show. Like, he's not going out there and electrifying with his arm strength or anything like that, but he's winning games. And I have to wonder, what does that mean for him? Because he is an unrestricted free agent this offseason. What sort of contract are we looking at? Because his numbers are very similar to Ryan Tannehill when he was in Miami, and he got a 4-year, $77 million extension. Do we see Josh Dobbs get that kind of a deal?
Well, he's definitely earned it. I can see that. And I could almost even see it in Minnesota because Kirk Cousins' deal is over after this year. He's hurt. He's coming back from injury. Are they going to want to give him another deal or go with Josh Dobbs?
I don't know. I have a list here of teams that he could potentially go to. I do want to have, Jim Powell's one guy who, again, a great football guy that I debate with a lot here. He says, if the hottest team is football is the Vikings, why aren't they number one in the power rankings after 5 in a row? And if it's talking about my power rankings aren't called, prisoner of the moment rankings. They're called power rankings, and they take the entire season into account. So if you start off 0-3 or 0-4, and then you rattle off 5 or 6 in a row, you don't move up to number one on the power rankings because you're still just 5-4. And I know the record doesn't totally matter, but the stats and those losses are going to matter, at least with my power rankings.
So I'm be honest, I don't have them in my power rankings either. I couldn't even tell you why. I guess they're on the skids out of the top 10, but yeah, they're not in my top 10.
Now Buck says Dobbs isn't a winner. However, most wins he has in the NFL is the last 2 games. Well, I mean, he's got 3 total this season, I think. And then he says, how has he earned it? I'm guessing he means the contract. How has he earned this big contract?
Well, he's came in and done things that nobody expected him to do. If he keeps this up, then then he's earned it.
Don't fall into Buck's trap, okay? What he's trying to get you to do is try to make an excuse as to why Dobbs has earned this contract. What I would say to Buck is that you don't earn contracts in the NFL. That's not how it works. You get a contract based on what the team thinks you can do for it. How did Matt Flynn earn his contract having 1 game for 400 yards? And he got a huge deal with Seattle, because of that 1 game and because he backed up Aaron Rodgers. So in the NFL, you don't earn contracts. You get contracts hoping that you'll earn them down the road. Josh Dobbs is a guy who looks like he can manage a game. Game managers are something that can win games in the NFL. I'll list off a couple of teams here, and you tell me what you think as far as the possibility of him fitting in there as a starter. The New England Patriots.
I can see that.
I don't know if I could see him going in there as a starter. I think if he goes in as a starter, you're opening up a huge can of worms for Bill Belichick, who's allegedly on the hot seat, to bring in Josh Dobbs and say he's the answer.
Well, I'm not saying Josh Dobbs is the answer, but I don't think Mac Jones is either. So
no, he's not. But I think that bringing Dobbs in and anointing him the starter, especially with a 4-year, $77 million deal, which is what I said, he's going to get this big deal. I think you're making him the starter right away without him ever taking a snap there. So I don't know if the Patriots are the best fit. I put them down because they need a quarterback. But as a team where he could go in and start, here's one I really like. How about the Atlanta Falcons?
Yes, that's a great one.
Drake London.
They're one of those teams that are missing that piece.
Yeah.
So
Bijan Robinson. I mean, this is a team that if they have a decent quarterback who doesn't turn the ball over, like Josh Dobbs, that's a nice fit.
I've actually been thinking, just totally off the wall here, like Justin Fields going to Atlanta if they get Caleb Williams.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he's from Georgia, so it just makes sense.
Buck does say game managers earn around $70 million for 5 years. I don't know if that's a question, but it does sound like a statement, and I think you're right because starters get $50 million a year for 5 years. So 70 for 5 sounds about right for a game manager.
Yeah. So what are the other teams, Wayne?
So some other teams here I'll throw out. I had the Commanders. I don't know if Sam Howell's the answer. They say that Rivera really believes in Sam Howell, but Rivera may not be the coach next year. So
I saw a crazy stat that he's second in yards. Howell is.
Yeah, he is in total yards. Yeah, to CJ Stroud, I think is number 1 in yards per game.
So that's something, I guess.
The other team I had here, the Rams, right? Because the Rams are going to probably be out on the Stafford deal next year, and they'll be looking for a quarterback.
Rams, yeah, but yeah. But they just picked up Carson Wentz. I'm thinking that he might be the next guy.
I don't know if Wentz is their long-term fit. I think they'll try him out. And then, of course, I have the Vikings. He could stay in Minnesota, especially if they keep winning. They're not going to get a high enough pick to get Penix or get any of the top quarterbacks. So if you're Minnesota and he wins out for the rest of the year or does really well for the rest of the year, you might as well bring him back next year.
Yeah, out of all the teams, I think that's the best fit, to be honest.
Yeah. By that time, he'll know the playbook.
Right. And he'll know all of his team members.
Buck does say Kirk is coming back to the Skull Nation and winning the North again.
You know what? I can see that.
I don't know. I feel like Kirk might just about be done because he's another quote-unquote game manager. Throws for a lot of yards, doesn't turn the ball over. I don't know. I think
Where's he
that
gonna go? He's not done playing. Where's he gonna go?
somewhere as a backup. Oh, there's another Rams quarterback for you. They seem to be doing the same thing that the Colts were doing, signing that like guy to his last deal, and then the guy doesn't pan out. But the Rams maybe will pan out. It worked for Stafford. I do like this take by Buck. Actually, he says Justin Fields going to the Falcons. That would be huge. If Justin Fields,
He agrees. Right on, Buck. We and you think alike, man.
that'd be huge for the Falcons. And he agrees. Ron Rivera is out. Ron is out. He's killing me with all these posts here. Let's see. Rams have. I'll pull this up here so I can read it. Rams have the rookie Stetson Bennett. Yeah, he's like 73 years old.
Right. Yeah.
I think he will get a shot over Dobbs once. Well, again, he's older than Dobbs. You're actually, if you bring in Dobbs, you're getting a younger player.
Well, let's move on to the other quarterbacks we wanted to talk about.
All right, yeah. We're spending a lot of time here on Josh Dobbs. Let's get into the next quarterback because this is a guy who's been having a couple of good games himself. All right, so I do have the comments up. CJ Stroud, MVP candidate. Now, this is something I've heard even before you proposed it. I'd heard people saying that Stroud was in the MVP conversation. Obviously, Stroud a couple weeks ago threw for 500 yards or whatever it is, 400 and something yards, 57, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. This past week, he has 356, 1-1. He's been playing great the last couple weeks. But like I said, I'm not a prisoner of the moment. So I'm not going to say, oh, wow, 2 good games. Let's hand him the trophy. He's the MVP. I think there are guys who are on better teams that are having as good or better a season that are going to be more in the MVP. I think he's in the race. I think his name is in the conversation, but I don't think he's the front runner or maybe even top 3 or 4.
Let's be honest. When I pose the question MVP, it's just kind of a good topic, But, he probably won't end up the MVP. I feel like the only way he ends up MVP is if he breaks some crazy rookie record with yards and touchdowns, or if he leads the Texans to win the division or something crazy like that, then maybe I can see the MVP. But right now, I feel like he's locked for offensive rookie of the year for sure.
Yeah, Jim Powell does chime in. He says best quarterback in Texas, which is a controversial statement. Which of course got Buck thinking. Jim Powell is wrong like normal. Dak is the best quarterback in Texas. I mean, this year it's close. I think that CJ Stroud is playing really well. I do think that the knock on him, especially when it comes to the MVP talk, is going to be his completion percentage at 61%. And then, of course, that 5-4 record, depending on how the season shakes out. And Buck did bring up the fact that, CJ's rookie of the year for sure. We'll talk about that. We do have midseason awards coming up. He's balling out. He said, but a defensive player should get MVP. I actually wrote down, some different scenarios. I said, obviously, Tua, Dak, Mahomes are all having great years. Those are quarterbacks that are going to be in the MVP hunt. But I also put down Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, and Geno Stone of the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think? Do you think a defensive player wins the MVP, or do you think it's going to be a quarterback / offensive player?
Well, like the NFL does, they hardly ever change. And every year it usually goes to the best team with the best record or the best quarterback on the best team. That's usually the number 1 seed, depending on what conference, doesn't matter. And then they pick on those 2. It sucks that it's that way. It's always probably going to be that way unless a defensive guy really stands out and does something crazy. Trust me, I would love to see a wide receiver get the MVP. I don't think a wide receiver has ever won it before, let alone more defensive players winning it. So I agree with you on that, but let's not talk about that too much, Wayne. We're going to be discussing that later.
No spoilers, gotcha. Right. And Buck does say, pause, the Texans are winning the division. That's wrong. And making the playoffs. MVP has to go to Mahomes or Lamar, sadly, probably, even though Myles Garrett should get it. So I disagree here. Winning the division, the Jacksonville Jaguars are winning that division. The Texans are not going to overtake them, I don't think.
I guess we'll see.
And he also says MVP is the quarterback on the best team. It's simple. They need to change the name of the award. All right. I mean, you have offensive player of the year. I always think it's stupid to have offensive player of the year and MVP and then give the MVP to an offensive player, but then give offensive player of the year to a different guy than who won the MVP. That makes
the offensive player of the year is kind of like the runner-up for MVP in all reality.
I guess, yeah, it's pretty much what it is. Jim Powell does say Jacksonville by a nose. I don't know how much, but it's definitely going to be Jacksonville. I'm a big Trevor Lawrence guy, so I definitely think it's going to be Jacksonville. We do have one more quarterback we're going to get to here before we get to our midseason rankings. So let's talk about him. Kyler Murray's back with the Arizona Cardinals. This completely shocked me that he came back because of the fact that I thought the Cardinals were mailing it in, going for that number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, maybe Drake May, but they were going for a quarterback in this draft. So I thought there was no way when they traded Dobbs, I thought, who are they going to go with a quarterback? They're not going to put Kyler back in there because he's going to win games. What does he do? He comes in and he wins the game. And he didn't play outstanding or anything, but he threw for over 200 yards. He ran for a touchdown. He looked really good, still had the cannon, throwing lasers out there. So maybe Arizona's not mailing it in.
I was just going to say that. I was like, now that he's playing, they're definitely not mailing it in because he's going to do whatever it takes to win games. So they don't get that number 1 pick. The farther they get away from that number 1 pick, the safer his job is. So I was actually surprised by that also. But I actually did think that he was going to come back. But when they opened up that practice window, for the PUP list, you never know if they're going to change their mind and want to put him back. So that's kind of where for me, I was like, oh, is he going to play? Is he not? And ultimately, I wasn't sure. And to see him out there doing what he was doing and coming back and leading a comeback win, typical Kyler Murray,
Yeah, I love watching Kyler Murray play. He's so exciting and electric. And I know that people like to knock him for his height because there's really nothing else you can knock him for. He's incredibly accurate. I think his career completion percentage is 67%. He was 70 a couple years ago before he got hurt. He's obviously fast. He can run a 4.4. He's got one of the best arms in the NFL. It's on par with Josh Allen, in terms of arms. He's just small. And I mean, if that's your only knock on the guy, I just say Russell Wilson, but a better Russell Wilson.
That's to be seen. Let's see if Kyler makes a Super Bowl first.
Okay. If he gets Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and Brandon Mauner, then maybe he will.
Truth.
All right. So I did have here one of the reasons I think Arizona is sticking with him is $82 million in dead cap money after the season. So they can't cut him, obviously.
Right.
If you do trade him, another team has to pick up that contract. Next year's cap number, $52 million. Then 45, then 55, then 43. That doesn't mean they don't move him, but I really feel like with all that money tied up in him, I really do think they're invested in him long term. They're not thinking quarterback in the draft. Maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. to go with him.
You think that's maybe why they wanted him to come back? So they were like, hey, we got all this money. We can't really get rid of you, kind of how my Broncos are with Russell Wilson right now. We can't really get rid of him at this point because the dead cap money would be ridiculous. So that could play a huge factor.
Yeah, for sure. And, Jim Powell says, that he's going to Vegas next year. He's going to be throwing ropes to 16, 17, and 87. I don't know what Vegas gives up for him. They traded all those picks for Devontae Adams. And even if they end up with a number 1 pick, I don't know. I just don't think he goes to the Raiders. I really do think Arizona says, listen, we're riding this guy out. We're going to add in the draft with Marvin Harrison and give him somebody to throw to. And just build from there. Their defense is still, Arizona's a bad team, but Kyler Murray is a really, really nice piece to build around.
I would agree. Honestly, who else are they going to get? If they get rid of him, they're just going to, is there a barrel of good quarterbacks out there somewhere that I can just go and grab and hey, this quarterback's going to work because we're going to get rid of this guy. Where do these teams think they're going to get?
They're going to get Josh Dobbs back and hey, we made a mistake when we traded you.
It's just there's not that many options out there, and if they lose out on Caleb Williams, they can get Marvin Harrison, but if they get Marvin Harrison, that means they miss out on the other quarterbacks if they don't have complete faith in Kyler. So, they got to have faith in Kyler at this point.
All right, we'll move on to the next segment. We've been teasing this one, and if you think we're flying through the show, you're right, but that's because these next 2 segments are going to take up a chunk of time here. So let's get things started with the mid-season awards. So the mid-season awards, these are obviously, we're halfway through the season. I don't know how you approached your list, but for me, I looked at it as these are the MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, whatnot, so far. I'm not saying this is who I think's going to win it. I'm not making predictions. I'm just saying we're halfway through the season. Here's your mid-season award. At the end of the season, it could be somebody completely different.
Yeah, that's why I labeled it mid-season. We're just going off how it is right now, what you think is the best in these awards for right now.
All right. So we'll jump into those. I just want to throw one more comment here from the last segment. Jim Powell does say Jimmy G's a winner, right? I don't know. I like Jimmy G. He's a game manager. He's a winner on the right team. San Francisco was perfect because it's a defensive / run first team. Jimmy G's good on a team like that. If you're looking for a quarterback to go out there and sling it, Jimmy G's not the guy.
No, look what he did in Las Vegas. Come on.
Yeah, I think he's a game manager, so he's a team. You want to bring him onto a team that all they need is a game manager.
Right.
All right, midseason awards. Let's kick things off. Let's start off MVP. I'll let you go first. Who do you have winning the NFL MVP halfway through the year?
Well, for me, this list was kind of hard, man. I've never actually done one of these lists before of actually picking players that I think deserve these awards right now. So when I suggested them to you, I was kind of like in over my head a little bit because I was like, oh, crap, I don't know who I'm going to pick. So I kind of sat here and I thought about it for a while. My two candidates were either Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. And ultimately, I'm going with Jalen Hurts.
Got snubbed last year, kind of like a makeup for it, like when.
And I think, and that's what I was just gonna say is like I think he deserved it last year. I think they just gave it to Mahomes, but I think Jalen Hurts is the one that was deserving of it.
So kind of like when Steve Nash got the MVP over Kobe Bryant, and then Kobe Bryant won it in a year when maybe he didn't deserve it because he got snubbed in the Steve Nash year.
Yeah, it's funny that you're reading my mind, Wayne, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
So for me, I said, I'm gonna look at it, and a lot of people, are talking quarterback, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, those types of guys, CJ Stroud, we mentioned as a long shot. I actually went with Christian McCaffrey. He set the record he tied the record for most consecutive, touchdowns, 747 yards so far in the year. He's on pace for 1,411. He's got 9 touchdowns. He's on pace for 17. That San Francisco team is driven on offense by the running back, period. It's, Brock Purdy's good, but Brock Purdy is a game manager, and that's fine in San Francisco. Like we said, Jimmy G did fine in San Francisco. Let the defense shut down the other team. Let the running back run, and if you have to, throw on play action. Purdy does that well. He couldn't do it if it weren't for Christian McCaffrey. I think Christian McCaffrey is the heart and soul of that offense, who I think is the best team in the NFL.
I would agree, and I would also say that what drives the ship, but is don't you think they use him a little too much?
They do, especially for somebody who's had an injury history. I think that they do kind of put a lot on him, but in a way, I'm kind of I always feel like running backs are positions that you draft, you run them for 4 years, you cut them, you don't sign them to extensions ever, not even Barry Sanders or Emmitt Smith, cut them after 4 years. And here's McCaffrey, and he's the example I always use because McCaffrey got that huge second deal and played 12 games in 3 years, and now though, however, he's healthy, he looks great. I do think that they're pushing it and they could blow that tire, which has a lot of miles on it, but they might not.
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. I mean, I watch him play. He looks great. He looks like he bounces right up. He's got spring in his step. I mean, maybe he's on a little bit of the juice.
Maybe, but it's for me, it's they have so many other weapons. It's and they even have other decent backup running backs. It's I get that, he's the guy, but man, give him some breaks.
Yeah. But yeah, so he's my MVP. And he's also my offensive player of the year. Because like I said, I didn't want to be MVP is offense, and the offensive player of the year is a different offensive player who didn't get the MVP. So I'm going both of those to Christian McCaffrey. Did you have a different offensive player of the year?
I did. My offensive player of the year, I'm going with CJ Stroud. I kind of went of the more traditional of how the NFL works, of how they'll probably pick it. So I went with the traditional voting. And so I'm going with CJ Stroud for my offensive rookie of the year.
All right, so hang on a second. So you said MVP came down to Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes.
No, Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. And your runner-up doesn't get the offensive player of the year?
No, I'm not I guess I'm not like the NFL in that aspect, but no. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, hey, I think it's going to make the next award a little bit boring, but how about offensive rookie of the year?
Offensive rookie of the year. That one, that one I'm also going with CJ Stroud. I feel like he's going to take both of those.
Yeah, if you give it to somebody different, I was really going to have an issue.
No. I'm giving him both those. I think he should be the offensive player of the year, but also rookie offensive player of the year.
Okay, well, I also had him as the offensive rookie of the year. We just talked about it. He is in the hunt for MVP, even though he's not going to win it. I do think that makes you the best rookie. There's a couple of rookies having decent years, but I think CJ Stroud so far this season, because again, we're not talking about the end of the season. We're talking right now. CJ Stroud has had the best rookie season so far.
Especially because of what he's working with. The Houston Texans don't have a whole lot. He's making stuff work with Tank Dell and Nico Collins. You know what I mean? Like, got to give it to him.
Yeah, Nico Collins is having a great year.
That's what I mean. But these are like no-name guys that he's turning into like big names.
But is he kind of in a way screwing himself because now he's winning these games? You're not going to get a good receiver in the draft. You're going to have to probably, well, I guess you go offensive line. That always helps.
Yeah, they need that.
All right, defensive rookie of the year. So this is I'll start off. So a lot of people talk about Jalen Carter. I know he's like the Las Vegas favorite at like -200 or something like that. I didn't really want to go with him. Obviously, he's got 4 sacks, 7 hits, 7 hurries. I'm sorry. Actually, I skipped over defensive player of the year. All right, let's dial it back. We skipped over defensive player of the year. We're jumping right into defensive rookie.
So which one? Defensive player of the year? I'm going with Myles Garrett.
Okay, it's easy. It's a safe pick.
The guy is going to probably end up the year. I'm going to say, like, I would even go as far as to say that he probably at the end of the year will be defensive player of the year, because especially if he gets more sacks, and he probably will now because their offense ain't going to be much now. So, I feel like he's going to be defensive player of the year.
Well, my defensive player of the year, and you're going to love this as a Broncos fan, is Max Crosby. And my reasoning behind it is that he's got 9.5 sacks, 15 quarterback hits, and 13 hurries, and he's double teamed on every single play. He actually is double teamed more than any other defensive lineman in the league, and he's still putting up these numbers. You watch him play, his motor never stops. He's constantly going until he gets a sack or gets a tackle. So for me, Max Crosby is the defensive player of the year.
I can see that, but I won't vote for any Raiders.
All right, now let's jump into defensive rookie of the year. Like I said, I didn't go with Jalen Carter, despite the stats and despite the fact he's a favorite. I went with Devin Witherspoon from Seattle. He's got
nice, dude. That's exactly who I picked.
Yeah, 44 tackles on the year. He's a physical corner. I don't think we've seen a corner this physical since maybe like Champ Bailey or Rod Woodson.
Remember how you were talking about Pete Carroll's like the guys he likes,
Yeah.
like the stat, and I mean their stature and their speed. This is one of those guys.
Yep. Yeah, fast, big, strong. And that cornerback tandem in Seattle is just outstanding. Is Tariq Woodson's the other one?
I'm going with Witherspoon on you on that one too. That guy is phenomenal. Out of Illinois, and I'm sure many people know that. But yeah, like I feel like the Broncos could have drafted him and we missed on that, so we're stupid on that for that. But yeah, that's who I vote for, Devin Witherspoon.
And I have to say, as much as I love Witherspoon, and I think he's a great corner, and I love how physical he is, Christian Gonzalez should have been the offensive rookie of the year, or defensive rookie of the year.
Bring on the Homer hat for Wayne. Bring it out. Bring it out.
I'm just saying it's sad. It's sad because he was playing lights out, and he was playing on that Belichick defense, which really favors corners. He was going to be so good if he hadn't gotten hurt.
No, I would agree, but take your Patriots glasses out just for 1 second, Wayne.
No, I'm not saying I would give it to him. I'm just saying that, had he not gotten hurt, that's what I think would have been. How about coach of the year? For me, I went with Nick Sirianni. Obviously, he's 8-1, and he's doing this on a team that actually turns the ball over more than they get turnovers, and yet he's still 8-1. So for me, Sirianni is the coach of the year.
I got to admit, when he first was their coach, that press conference about he didn't have a very good opening press conference. Like when that first happened, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be terrible. And then he ended up being really good. He's not my vote. My vote would be Dan Campbell of the Lions.
Okay. Yeah, I like Dan Campbell, and I've liked him since he got there. I like the personality, we're going to bite their knees off kind of person. And his team plays like that, and they play like a team. And I thought actually their draft, when they went out and they got Jack Campbell, and I'm watching the tape on him going to the Lions, I said, holy Moses, Jack Campbell's an animal. And I thought he goes to the Lions with Dan Campbell as the head coach. He's going to be just absolute terror.
But also the reason why I want to give it to him is because he's turned the team into his vision. Like they play like he played as a player. Like they're tough, and I had to give it to him. I'm like, he should have got. I don't know if he got it last year. I really don't follow. I didn't really follow that, but yeah, I think he should definitely win it this year.
Here's my Lions question for you, which is at the end of this year, I believe Jared Goff is a free agent, and so do the Lions extend him Because I'll be honest, I really want to see Hendon Hooker play.
I think they extend him. Like Goff has played pretty well for them, especially when he was kind of like hey, we'll take him off your hands kind of deal in the trade, and he turned out really well. So I don't know. In my eyes, I kind of feel like they extend him.
Okay. And then the last award I had here is Comeback Player of the Year. And of course, I put Damar Hamlin, even though he's only played one game, because the guy died on the field and now he's playing again. So for me, that's hands down Comeback Player of the Year.
I'm going Josh Dobbs.
Okay.
Comeback player. I don't know like what you exactly consider comeback player. Like, he hasn't really done well, like, but he's doing good. Does that mean that's a comeback player? I've never really understood that.
I don't think anyone understands it. You can just kind of pick whoever you want. You're like, hey, they're having a better year this year than they had last year.
Right. And he hasn't had any good pass, so he's having a good right now. So that's why I'd give it to him.
All right. Well, those are our midseason awards. Let's talk about the power rankings because we definitely alluded to those. Love that on the next segment I have power. Oh, it says power rankings on ours, but it says supercomputer rankings on the next doors there. So we'll talk about supercomputer rankings in a second. I actually want to talk about your power rankings before we talk about mine, because I did.
All right, bring it on, Wayne. I know you got some beef. Bring it on, brother.
Talk about it. So let's bring them up here. Let's show people what we're talking about here. So your power rankings, we've got the 49ers 1, Eagles 2, Chiefs 3. At 4, we have the Lions, then the Ravens at 5, the Dolphins at 6, the Cowboys at 7, the Browns at 8, the Jaguars at 9, and the Seahawks at 10. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't necessarily have a problem with your order. I had a problem with some of the changes that happened since last week's power rankings. And let's start right off the bat. You brought it up in our chat, which is the Bengals, who went from 3rd in the power rankings to out of the power rankings after a 30-27 loss to the Texans, who have the hottest quarterback in the league.
Okay, so let me defend my rankings a little bit. When I do my rankings, I go week by week. I don't factor in last week. I go just like you said, recency bias. So I judge it by the week. And the Bengals lost to Houston. Granted, Houston's doing okay, but it's still Houston Texans. So I had to take them out of the top 10.
Okay, well, I like that you pointed out that you base it on the week. Recency bias, right? That's how we're
doing. I also base it on wins and losses, like their record, who they play, how they played those teams. And then I pick from there. Like the order, to be honest with you, man, I never really know what order to put them in. I just want the 10 in there that I think deserve the 10.
All right, well, easy, Muhammad Ali. Before you start dancing, I'm going to just focus on what you just said, was that you focus on recency bias and what happened last week. That's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles went from 4th to 2nd, and they didn't even play last week.
Well, either did the Chiefs, but I just feel like I put the 49ers number 1 because I feel like this is why I put the Eagles 2, is because I feel like 49ers and Eagles are the number 1, number 2 best teams in the NFL. But I think ultimately, if it came down to it again, and if 49ers have all their weapons, the 49ers are winning that game. So I would have to go with 49ers for number 1, Eagles number 2.
Okay, well, and I'm also going to bring up another team that had a bye. The Dolphins weren't even in your top 10 last week. Now they're 6th because they put up monster stats in their bye week. Were they playing, like World of Warcraft?
Well, actually, as I debated the list, I was like, if I'm going to take the Bengals out, who am I going to put in the list? And I was like, well, the Dolphins are playing really good. And last power ranking week, last week, I wanted to put the Dolphins in, but I left them out. So that's why they're in there now.
And the Dallas Cowboys won 49-17 this week, and they dropped in the ratings.
Let me just say I'm not a Cowboys fan. I get sick of all the Cowboys coverage, and everybody thinks that they deserve to be higher in lists and better than they really are. They beat up on bad teams, and then when they play good teams, they shit the bed. Sorry for my language. But and that's just how I feel. So they get knocked down the list. Okay,
so this is my problem. I've said it last week. I was like, with opinion-based power rankings, is like, all right, so why did they drop? I don't really like them. Right, so that's why they dropped. That is factored into how.
Well, no, but I also gave you a reason why, is because I told you they beat up on bad teams, and then they don't play very well against good teams.
But they dropped. They didn't see where they were.
Like I said, that's a week-to-week thing. Like I told you, I don't know what the orders are when I do these things. I just put them in the list.
I guess. I mean, I was Let's get into some supercomputer rankings here because these are non-biased. This has not my opinion in any of this stuff. This is the computer spits out the numbers and I just write down the order. So we have the 49ers in first, then the Ravens, Cowboys, Lions, and the Eagles rounding out the top 5. Then we have the Browns, Chiefs, Texans, Dolphins, and Jaguars. Obviously, the worst team in the league is the Giants. I don't think anyone would debate that. But again, not my opinion. So the supercomputer spits out these rankings. Again, they have the Cowboys third.
But see, your rankings don't take in the variable of, like I said, of them playing bad teams and them running up the score on bad teams. So hence why they're ranked third on your list.
That's exactly what it does. So the power rankings, just to go into what we talked about last week, how the rankings are calculated, is what you do against a team based on that team's season averages. So if you score 40 against a team that gives up 40, you get 0 for the game because it's a wash. If you score 40 against a team that allows 12, you get 28. So that's a huge win. You know what I'm saying? So that's how it's calculated. So the Cowboys having the most points, and like I said, these are points per game that they average. The Cowboys are averaging 233.87 points per game. That's in beating up, that's 233.87 over their opponent's averages.
Yeah. No, I know why this happens, but like I have to argue with you about the variables that you don't account for in these numbers. Well, like you're not accounting for like backup quarterbacks that they're playing or injuries that are occurred. Like I would have factored in like the Bengals. The reason why they lost partly is because they had injured wide receivers that weren't 100%. You don't account for that in the rankings. Just different things like that. I'm always gonna point out to you.
Okay, but with the Cowboys, I did account for their opponent's strengths. And
no, you did. Like the Cowboys, like they do put up a lot of points. They're in your ranking. They should be third. I get that. I'm just saying, like, but this is what they do. You know,
the big thing with the Cowboys isn't so much the points that they score; it's actually the turnovers they generate because turnovers are worth a lot in the rankings.
Okay, I'd have to like see how all your stuff scored one of these times, so I can see how it all breaks down, like all in all mathematics. I really like to check that out.
Yeah, I'll send over a spreadsheet because it's pretty interesting. But like I said, there's no bias in it. Like I said, I just want to bring up one more time. We'll look at some of the worst teams. Like I said, they have the Giants are worst, then the Panthers, Raiders, Bears, Patriots, Commanders. The Broncos went from dead last about 2 weeks ago to now they're in 25th. They're still at negative 145 points per game. But they could do something here. They could climb out of the if they can get into the positives, they're in the top 15.
Yeah, I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want to get my hopes up yet. So let's just keep playing ball and see where we go.
I mean, what really hurts them, and I mentioned it last week, is the fact that they gave up 70 points and 800 yards to the Dolphins.
Yeah.
If I take that game out, they're probably 15th or
14th. Well, good to know.
So those are the power rankings that we have. And now it is time for our last segment, what we close the show with. The 2-minute warning, which is where we get to talk about our teams, what we're thinking, what's going on. I don't know. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I went first last week, Wayne. You go first this time.
Let me talk about the New England Patriots here because I do not know what the hell, for the first time in my life, Bill Belichick was thinking last week. Now, listen, if you follow, I am a writer on Musket Fire and on Fansided, so if you want to read some of my articles, please check them out. You will see that I am not a Mac Jones fan. I feel like Mac Jones should not have started a single game this year. Bailey Zappi should have been the starter going into week 1. I've applauded every time they've pulled Mac Jones and hoped that was the last I was going to see of him. But last week, to pull him with 2 minutes to go, down by 5 or 6, and put Bailey Zappi in there, who hadn't thrown a pass all game and hadn't taken any snaps other than backup snaps in practice, I didn't know what to think of that. I don't know what the hell Bill Belichick was thinking.
I didn't understand that either, and also didn't understand that you seen Mac Jones on the sideline getting berated by Bill O'Brien, and then you see Bill Belichick just standing there like, I'm just gonna wait till they're done talking and da-da-da-da-da. Like, what the hell's going on?
Like, that I understand, and I'll tell you what, because Bill O'Brien has a reputation. I think Tom Brady used to call him the teapot, right? Because he'll just explode. Steam starts coming out of his ears, and he blows up. We saw Bill O'Brien and Tom Brady screaming in each other's faces.
Yep.
When they were on the same sideline, because Brady told a wide receiver that he needed to come to the ball, and Bill O'Brien told him, he goes, "No, that was your fault. That was a bad throw. Don't tell the receiver it's his fault." And they got in this big shouting match on the sideline. Now, The rumors have come out since this game. We saw that video of Bill O'Brien just laying into Mac Jones, who was not yelling back at him, that Mac Jones's decision-making this season has irritated the crap out of everybody in the coaching staff. They do not like the decisions he's making, and it gets worse and worse and worse with every game. And as the games go on, this was the last straw. That interception he threw was horrible. Gesicki was wide open in the end zone, and he threw it short because he was throwing off his back foot like a fadeaway pass and threw it to a defender. And I think that's the last we're going to see of him this season. I think Bailey Zappi is going to start when they come back from the bye week, which not saying that he's the savior, but I think he's a much better quarterback. I think Bill Belichick wanted to go with Zappi to start the season. I truly believe that because he pointed out this was going to be a competition. And by all reports, Zappi was outplaying Mac Jones in the preseason, but Robert Kraft is a fan of Mac Jones. And Robert Kraft has overstepped before with Bill Belichick when he wouldn't let him trade Tom Brady. I think he did it again with Mac Jones. Now Jones is out. I think Zappi's in, and I think we're going to see a much better Patriots team.
Okay, so if Mac Jones isn't the answer and possibly Bailey Zappi's not the answer, who are they going to draft someone next year? They're going to be in the top 5 probably in pick.
They will. And here's my thing is the guy I really want is in next year's draft. I want Shedeur Sanders. And he's not going out in this draft, unfortunately, but he's the guy I really want. Now, he's not going to be in it. So the guy I really want in this draft is Michael Penix Jr. The reports I'm reading on him are having him in the bottom of the first round, early second round, which blows my mind. However, I did talk to my buddy Dan Sullivan, who is a draft expert like Todd McShay, like Mel Kiper. And I said, hey, is this true? Why would he be going at the end of the first round? And Dan said, no, he goes, wait till after the workouts, after the season's over. Michael Penix is going to go top 10. So I think the Patriots take him. That's the guy I think that I want over Caleb Williams and over Drake May.
Yeah, that seems more like a Belichick guy. Also, but do you think Belichick's is he even gonna be there? Like, who's gonna pull the trigger on that pick?
I think Belichick's gonna be there. He may not be the GM. I think that Kraft's really gonna have a talk with him about having a regular GM come in full time so that Bill could just focus on coaching. But I think Bill is there next year. I just don't see a scenario where he's not there. Although I did send a meme that I created to a friend of mine who's a Chicago Bears fan of Bill, Josh McDaniels going to Chicago and coaching up Justin Fields. And he said, I got to change my pants just seeing that.
All right, my turn. Okay, so 2-minute warning for me. My Broncos. Okay, as everybody knows, if anybody didn't watch Monday Night Football, the Broncos beat the Bills in Buffalo, and we haven't won in Buffalo since 2007. So 16 years we haven't beat Buffalo in Buffalo. And I forget what year it was, but we haven't won a primetime game in a long time also, which we broke that streak also. So it's nice to these streaks. Oh, and then a couple weeks ago we beat the Chiefs and we haven't beat them in 16 games. So it's really been nice that we've ended these streaks, or these sad streaks that we've had. But my final word in all this would be I think that Sean Payton is finally getting the team in his eyes. Not necessarily the offense he wants to run, because it's not his offense. It's not necessarily even the offense that Russell ran. It's a completely different. It's just whatever's working right now. And it's working. And we've won 2 games in a row, and now we play the Minnesota. We played with Josh Dobbs. It's a winnable game, Sunday Night Football. And then we go on to play the Browns with no Deshaun Watson, which is also another winnable game. So at the end of all this, we could be 7-5. And that's, and at the half point, like a little bit over the half point of the season, I'll take that. When I thought we weren't going to be anywhere near this.
Yeah, especially the way that they started the season. And I pointed out last week, I'll say it again, I said it again a couple times a show, Russell Wilson's playing really good football this year. And you look at what he has for weapons, he's got Jerry Jeudy, who I think is a legit receiver, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, right? I think that they've got a decent setup there. Their problem hasn't been offense. It's been that they allow teams to gain 800 yards or 500 yards against them.
And they've turned that around. Since that 70 burger, they've turned it around. We went from the worst team giving up the most yards to the best team, or one of the best teams, giving up the least amount of yards. So they've completely turned that around since then.
And what's been the key to that? Why did they struggle so much early?
Maybe it was just gelling together. I'm not sure. Maybe some diversity also in that. I'm not sure. I'm just glad that they're on the right track now.
I do, and I'm disappointed they didn't sell at the trade deadline because when I saw that Patrick Surtain might be on the sell list, I was licking my lips. The
You
idea
and
of,
every other NFL GM, Wayne. The Broncos were like, no, that's not happening. This is a key piece of our D. He shuts down everybody. Like, do you see what he did to Diggs? Shut him down.
he's a monster. I love him, and I would have loved him even more in a Patriots uniform. I just don't. I don't think I would have given up 2 first-round picks, which is what I think it would have costed.
Did you hear the story about how the Eagles and 49ers both reached out to the Broncos about, oh, well, we don't want them to have him. We like if it's going to be them, like we want them.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Now, what about? I have to ask you about Judy because he's a guy who's been a trade candidate rumor-wise for the last 2 seasons. It seems like they're going to ride it out with him. I mean, do you like Judy?
He's been very inconsistent. But he's shown like spurts of he could be great. It's just I don't know if it's him being immature or if it's just he's never really had the offense that fit him because we've been changing offenses from year to year since he's been here. So I'm not sure if it's one of those factors, but I feel like now we have a coach that's legitimate, so and he hasn't been able to stay healthy, so that's also been an issue. I feel like they're gonna ride it out with him this year. Hopefully he does well, and if he does well enough, he can maybe be trade bait for the draft next year.
Okay. I mean, I don't think he gets you much. I mean, he's in the last year of his rookie deal, right? So you're looking at an option year. You might get a 4th-round pick, 3rd-round pick for him.
Maybe, but then at that point they might just keep him. So we'll see how he does the rest of these 8 games.
All right, perfect. So yeah, both of our teams stink, but at least Mark's team is on a hot streak. My team is on a cold streak and making horrible coaching decisions, which I've never seen them do before.
But it's what you want, right? You want them to keep losing to get that pick, right? So they're doing what you want.
So 2 choices: either lose all the rest of the games, or Bailey Zappi win out. One of those 2.
Which one do you think is going to happen?
In a game of Would You Rather, I would probably bet on them losing the rest of their games.
Me too. Me too.
Well, listen, hey, everybody, thank you for joining in. Thank you, Man Hour Buck, for putting in some comments. Jim Powell,
yes, thank you guys.
We really appreciate it. Obviously, you guys, anybody who's listening, you can kind of watch the show on Facebook or YouTube. We're live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Make sure you're following us on social media. We are on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at NFL Experts Pod, at NFL Experts Pod, on TikTok at NFL Experts Pod, and email us nflexpertspod@gmail.com. We do reply. We are interactive, and we love you guys submitting your questions and your thoughts so we can comment on them.
Yes, questions. Give us some follows if you like. Keep joining us in. Throw in those comments. I love the comments. So, shout out to Buck and to what's your other friend's name? I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Jim Powell.
Jim Powell. Thank you guys. Really appreciate that.
And definitely make sure you're questioning Mark's power rankings every week. I can't be the only one.
Yeah, keep it on. It's okay. Like I said, I've never really done these lists before, so this is all new for me.
Right. Well, thank you guys so much. Join us again next Wednesday, 7 p.m. on Facebook and on YouTube.
Yes, NFL Experts Pod.